At my 13th birthday dinner, my mom's friend gripped my hand and whispered, "What happened to your twin wasn't your fault." I had no idea what Sandra meant when she said that to me across the dinner table. My parents were in the kitchen getting my cake, and Sandra had been drinking wine all evening. I looked at her confused and whispered back, "I don't have a twin." Her face went completely white. She glanced toward the kitchen where my parents were talking, then back at me with this terrified expression. "Oh, honey, I thought you knew," she said quietly, then immediately changed the subject when my mom walked back in. "I'm Chloe, and I've been an only child my entire life. My parents, Linda and Robert, always said they'd wanted more kids but couldn't have any after me." But Sandra's comment stuck in my head for days after my birthday. I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before, like how my parents had no baby pictures of me from my first 6 months. When I asked my mom about it, she said they'd lost them in a house fire before we moved, but I'd never heard about any house fire. There were other weird things too. My mom would sometimes set out 2 plates for breakfast, then quickly put one away when she saw me watching. My dad had this habit of saying girls plural when talking to me, like, "Good morning, girls," then correcting himself to girl. I found a box of old medical records in the attic while looking for Christmas decorations. Most were normal checkups, but there were several from something called Riverside Pediatric Psychology, from when I was 7 and 8. Appointments for survivor guilt counseling and trauma recovery. I'd never been to therapy that I could remember. When I asked my mom about it, she said I'd had some nightmares as a kid and they'd wanted to help me sleep better. But survivor guilt seemed like a strange term for regular nightmares. Sandra started acting weird around me after the birthday dinner. She'd avoid eye contact when she came over, and one time I caught her staring at me with this sad expression, like she felt sorry for me. When I waved, she quickly looked away. I decided to call Sandra directly when my parents weren't home. I told her I needed to know what she meant about my twin. There was a long silence on the phone. Then she said, "Chloe, that's not my place to tell you. You need to ask your parents." But when I pressed her, she finally said, "There was an accident when you were very young. Your parents thought it was better if you didn't remember." Then she hung up before I could ask any more questions. That night at dinner, I brought up Sandra's comment. My parents exchanged this look across the table, the kind of silent communication that married couples do. My dad set down his fork and said, "Chloe, Sandra had too much wine." She was confused. But my mom started crying quietly, which didn't make sense if Sandra was just confused. When I asked why she was upset, my dad said it was because talking about babies made her emotional about not being able to have more children. I started searching through more of our old stuff. In the back of my mom's closet, I found a plastic storage bin I'd never seen before. Inside were 2 identical baby blankets, 2 matching pacifiers, and a hospital bracelet with my name and birth date, but also another bracelet with the name Emma and the same date. There were photos too, pictures of my mom in the hospital holding 2 babies, pictures of my dad with both babies, 1 in each arm, and dozens of photos of 2 identical baby girls in matching outfits. I confronted my parents that evening with the photos spread across the kitchen table. My mom broke down completely, sobbing in a way I'd never seen before. My dad put his arm around her and looked at me with the most serious expression I'd ever seen on his face. And that's when they finally told me what really happened to Emma. Dad's voice breaks as he finally tells me the truth. "You had a twin sister named Emma," he says, his hand still around Mom's trembling shoulders. "She died when you were both 2 years old." The words hit me like a physical blow. I've been preparing myself for something since finding those photos, but hearing it spoken aloud makes it real in a way I wasn't ready for. My twin sister, Emma, a name I should have grown up saying but never knew existed until I found that tiny hospital bracelet. "How?" I whisper, my voice barely audible in our kitchen, where just hours ago we were having a normal family dinner. Mom wipes her eyes, trying to compose herself. "It was an accident, Chloe. A terrible accident." Dad looks at the ceiling, blinking rapidly. "We had a pool in our backyard at the old house, before we moved here." The pieces start connecting in my mind. No house fire, a drowning. That's why they never talked about the old house. "You were both playing in the yard." Mom continues, her voice hollow. "I went inside to answer the phone. It was just for a minute." Her voice cracks, and she covers her mouth with her hand. Dad takes over. "Emma fell in. By the time we found her," he can't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. I stare at the photos spread across our kitchen table. 2 identical little girls in matching pink dresses. 2 babies sleeping side by side in a crib. A life that existed and then suddenly didn't. A sister I can't remember. "I was there?" I ask, though I already know the answer from what Sandra said. Mom nods slowly. "You were playing together. You were both so young. You couldn't have done anything to help her." The weight of what they're saying crashes over me. I witnessed my twin sister drown when I was 2 years old. The thought makes me dizzy, like the floor is tilting beneath me. "Why didn't you ever tell me about her?" I demand, sudden anger flaring up through my confusion. "Why would you hide that I had a sister?" My parents exchange another look, and I hate that silent communication now. All the years of secrets passing between them. "After it happened, you stopped talking," Dad explains. "You wouldn't speak for months. The doctors said you were traumatized by what you'd seen. You kept asking where Emma was. Mom adds, her voice barely above a whisper, over and over. We tried explaining that she was gone, but you couldn't understand. You'd look for her everywhere. I try to imagine myself as a toddler, searching for someone who would never come back. The thought makes my chest ache. When you started talking again, you didn't mention Emma anymore. Dad continues. The child psychologist said you might have blocked out the memory as a way to protect yourself. Dr. Michaels at Riverside Pediatric. Mom clarifies. She suggested that forcing you to remember might cause more trauma. She said sometimes children repress memories that are too painful. So you decided to just erase her? I ask, my voice rising. Pretend she never existed? We thought we were protecting you, Dad says, his expression pleading. We packed away the photos, her things. We moved to a house without a pool. We tried to give you a normal childhood. But when you were 7, you started having nightmares. Mom says, you'd wake up screaming about water and someone being gone. We took you back to Riverside Pediatric. The survivor guilt counseling, I say, remembering the medical records I found. Mom nods. You didn't remember Emma consciously, but Dr. Michaels said the trauma was still there. Under the surface, the therapy seemed to help. The nightmares stopped. I try to process everything they're telling me. My entire life has been built around this absence, this missing piece I never knew was gone. I deserve to know. I say finally, my voice steadier than I feel. She was my sister. You're right, Dad admits. We thought we were doing what was best. But maybe we were just afraid. Afraid of reliving it ourselves. Afraid of seeing you in pain again. We should have told you when you were older, Mom says, wiping her tears. We just never found the right time. And then years passed, and it became this impossible secret. I look down at the hospital bracelet with Emma's name on it, so tiny it could fit around my finger now. I try to feel something for this sister. I can't remember grief, loss, anything, but there's just this strange emptiness where those feelings should be. What was she like? I ask suddenly. My parents look surprised by the question. She was the louder one. Mom says after a moment, a small, sad smile appearing through her tears. You were always more cautious, but Emma would dive into everything head first. You balanced each other. She had this laugh that would make everyone around her laugh too, Dad adds, his voice softening with the memory, even as a baby. I pick up one of the photos. The one with both of us in my dad's arms. We're identical, but somehow I can tell which one is me. I'm clutching Dad's shirt, while Emma has one arm stretched out toward the camera, reaching for something just out of frame. I want to know everything about her, I say. Everything you remember. Mom reaches across the table and takes my hand. Her fingers are cold and trembling. We'll tell you everything, Chloe. No more secrets. As they begin sharing stories about Emma, I realize I'm mourning someone I never knew I lost. A sister who's been gone for 11 years, but who I'm just now beginning to miss. I wonder if some part of me has always felt her absence, like a phantom limb I couldn't name. I think about all the times my dad accidentally said girls instead of girl. All the moments my mom set out 2 plates at breakfast. They never really forgot her, even when they tried to pretend she didn't exist. And now I have to learn how to remember someone I never knew I forgot. I spend the next few days in a daze. School feels surreal, like I'm watching myself go through the motions from somewhere outside my body. I answer when teachers call on me. I eat lunch with my friends, but I'm not really there. I'm thinking about Emma. At night, I lie awake staring at my ceiling, trying to conjure memories that aren't there. Sometimes I think I can almost feel something, a flash of laughter, the sensation of small hands holding mine, but then it slips away like water through my fingers. Mom and Dad are trying. They've brought out more photos, told me stories about how Emma loved strawberries but hated bananas, how she always wanted to be carried while I preferred to walk. But these feel like stories about a stranger, not my sister, not my twin. I need to know more, I tell them over dinner 3 days after their confession. Not just what you remember. I need to see evidence. Dad puts down his fork. What kind of evidence, Chloe? Newspaper articles about the accident, police reports, medical records. I've been making a list. Emma's death certificate. Mom's hand trembles as she reaches for her water glass. I don't think that's necessary, honey. Those things are difficult. So is finding out I had a twin sister who died and you never told me about her, I reply, my voice sharper than I intended. Dad and Mom exchange one of those looks I've grown to hate. We'll see what we can find, Dad finally says. But I don't wait for them. The next day after school, I take the bus downtown to the public library. The librarian helps me access their digital newspaper archives, showing me how to search by date range and keywords. I type in our old address and the word, drowning. It takes less than a minute to find it, a small article dated June 17th, 11 years ago. Toddler drowns in backyard pool accident. My heart pounds as I read the brief paragraph. It mentions a 2-year-old girl drowning in a residential pool, that paramedics were called but the child was pronounced dead at the scene. It doesn't name us, just refers to the family and the victim, but it's us. It's Emma. What catches my attention is the line, police are investigating the circumstances of the incident. Investigating? Why would they need to investigate an accident? I print the article and keep searching, finding 2 follow-up pieces. One mentions no charges filed in the Westbrook pool drowning, and another about pool safety that references last month's tragic incident. No charges? What charges could there have been? On my way home, I stop at Sandra's house. I haven't spoken to her since that day in her kitchen, but I need answers that my parents aren't giving me. She looks surprised when she opens the door. Chloe, does your mom know you're here? No. I hold up the printed articles. I found these about Emma's drowning. Sandra's face pales. She glances over my shoulder as if expecting to see my parents, then reluctantly steps aside. You'd better come in. We sit at her kitchen table, the same place where she first mentioned my twin. She makes tea neither of us drinks. My parents told me Emma drowned when we were 2, I say. But these articles mention police investigations and no charges filed. What really happened? Sandra stares at her tea. It was an accident, Chloe. A terrible accident. Then why would there be talk of charges? She sighs deeply. Because your parents left you 2 alone, just for a few minutes. Your mom ran inside to answer the phone, and your dad was in the garage. The gate to the pool area was supposed to be locked, but... She trails off, but I can fill in the blanks. The gate wasn't locked. Emma got through. She fell in. The police investigated because anytime a child dies in circumstances that might involve negligence, they have to. Sandra continues. But it was ruled an accident. Your parents were devastated. They punished themselves far more than any court could have. And I was there? I press. I saw it happen? Sandra's eyes fill with tears. You were found sitting by the pool when your mom ran out. You were trying to reach into the water for her. The image hits me like a physical blow, my 2-year-old self, reaching for my drowning sister, unable to help her. I feel suddenly dizzy. Your parents were terrified it would traumatize you for life, Sandra continues. That's why they got you therapy. That's why they tried to shield you from it. The next day, I skip school. I wait until my parents leave for work, then start searching the house systematically. In Dad's home office, I find a locked filing cabinet. The key isn't hard to locate. It's taped to the underside of his desk drawer, where he keeps all his hidden keys. Inside the bottom drawer, behind tax returns and insurance policies, I find a thick manila envelope labeled simply E. My hands shake as I open it. Inside are documents I've been looking for: Emma's birth certificate, identical to mine except for the name. Medical records from our pediatrician showing appointments for Emma and Chloe Westbrook. Immunization records for both of us. And then I find it Emma's death certificate. Cause of death, asphyxiation due to drowning. But what makes my blood run cold is the line below it, under contributing factors. It reads, unattended minors, unsecured pool access. There are other papers too, copies of police reports with statements from my parents. Mom's statement describes finding Emma in the pool and me sitting beside it. Dad's statement mentions being in the garage for approximately 10 to 15 minutes, while Mom was briefly inside the house. One report includes a note that the surviving twin was present during the incident but not considered responsible due to age. Not considered responsible? Did someone think I might have been responsible for my sister's death? I'm so absorbed in reading that I don't hear the front door open. I only realize Mom is home when she appears in the doorway of the office. Chloe? Her voice is sharp with surprise. Why aren't you at school? What are you doing? I look up, Emma's death certificate still in my hand. Why does this say I wasn't considered responsible? Did someone think I pushed her in? Mom's face crumples. She steps into the room and slowly sinks into Dad's desk chair. No, honey, no. Nobody thought that. She takes a deep breath. The police have to investigate all possibilities when a child dies. They asked if you and Emma had been fighting, if you might have accidentally pushed her. But you were only 2 years old. Nobody believed you did anything wrong. Then why did you hide it from me? Why did you let me find out from Sandra instead of telling me yourself? Mom wipes away tears. Because we were ashamed, Chloe. We were supposed to protect both of you, and we failed. We left you alone near a pool for just a few minutes, and it cost Emma her life. How do you tell your child that your negligence killed her sister? I stare at the papers scattered across the desk. Fragments of a life and death I can't remember. I want to see where she's buried, I say suddenly. Mom looks up, surprised. You do? Yes, today. I want to see my sister's grave. Mom's car pulls into the cemetery entrance slowly, like she's giving me time to change my mind. The wheels crunch over gravel as we wind through rows of headstones, some weathered by years of rain and sun, others fresh with newly turned earth. I press my forehead against the cool window glass, watching names and dates blur past. It's in the children's section, Mom says quietly, near the willow tree. My stomach knots as we park. I didn't know cemeteries had children's sections. The thought makes me feel sick. Mom reaches for my hand as we walk across the grass, but I pull away. I'm still angry at her, at Dad, at the world that took my sister and then erased her. The anger feels safer than the grief that's been threatening to drown me since I found those papers. We stop in front of a small, pale pink granite headstone. It's shaped like a heart, with a lamb carved at the top. Below it, the inscription reads, Emma Grace Westbrook, beloved daughter and sister, forever in our hearts. I stare at the dates the same birthday as mine. And a death date less than 3 years later. Such a short life, reduced to 2 dates and a dash. We come here on her birthday, Mom says, her voice barely audible. And on the anniversary, we bring flowers. Without me, I say flatly. Mom looks down. Yes, without you. I kneel in the grass, running my fingers over Emma's name. My sister, my twin, half of me that I never knew was missing. Tell me what really happened, I say without looking up. All of it. No more protecting me. Mom takes a deep breath. Your dad was working on his motorcycle in the garage. I was inside making lunch. You and Emma were playing in the backyard with your little plastic pool, not the swimming pool, just a tiny wading pool. She pauses, her voice wavering. The phone rang. It was Grandma, calling about her upcoming visit. I told you girls to stay in the small pool, that I'd be right back. The gate to the big pool was supposed to be locked. But it wasn't. I finished for her. Mom shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. No. Your dad had been skimming leaves earlier and forgot to lock it. I was on the phone for maybe 5 minutes. When I came back outside, she breaks off, covering her mouth with her hand. What did you see? I press. Emma was in the water, face down. And you were. She stops again, struggling. You were sitting at the edge of the pool, reaching for her, crying, saying MM up over and over. The nickname hits me like a physical blow. MM. Something stirs in my mind, a flash of memory, so brief I almost miss it. Calling to someone. MM. My name for her. I screamed for your father, Mom continues. He came running, jumped in fully clothed. He pulled Emma out, started CPR while I called 911. But she had been under too long. And I just watched? I ask, my voice small. Mom kneels beside me, her hands gripping my shoulders. Chloe, listen to me. You were 2 years old. You couldn't have saved her. The police report said you likely tried to reach her but couldn't. The report said I wasn't responsible, I whisper, but I was there. I should have done something. That's exactly what you said in therapy, a voice says behind us. I turn to see Dad walking toward us, his face drawn with grief. He must have followed us here. When you were 7 and the nightmares started, he explains, Dr. Michaels at Riverside finally got you to talk about that day. You didn't remember details, but you kept saying I tried to help MM and I couldn't reach her. He kneels on the other side of me, forming a small circle around Emma's grave. The therapist said you were experiencing survivor guilt. That even though you were too young to understand what happened, some part of you felt responsible for not saving her. Is that why you never told me? I ask, because you thought I'd blame myself? Mom and Dad exchange a look over my head. Partly, Mom admits, but also because we blamed ourselves. We were responsible for both of you. And we failed. Your dad forgot to lock the gate. I left you both alone. The police investigated us for negligence. Dad adds, his voice thick. They were right to. We were negligent. We've lived with that guilt every day since. I look back at Emma's headstone, trying to process everything. So what happened after? With me, I mean. Mom wipes her eyes. You stopped talking, completely, for almost 3 months. The doctors said it was trauma response. When you did start speaking again, you never mentioned Emma. It was like you'd erased her from your memory. The child psychologist at Riverside said forcing you to remember might cause more harm. Dad explains, Dr. Michaels told us that sometimes children block out traumatic memories as a protection mechanism. So you just went along with it? I ask, anger rising again. Pretended she never existed? At first, yes. Mom admits. We packed away her things, moved to a new house, started over. We thought we were protecting you. But when the nightmares started, Dad continues, we took you back to Riverside. Dr. Michaels said the trauma was still there, under the surface. That's when you started the survivor guilt counseling. I remember those sessions vaguely, a kind woman with glasses who asked me to draw pictures of my dreams. I'd always draw water, but I never knew why. I found the police reports. I tell them. They said I was trying to reach into the water for her when you found us. Mom nods, fresh tears spilling. You were leaning over the edge of the pool. If you had fallen in too. She can't finish the sentence. So I didn't just watch. I tried to save her, I say, feeling a strange relief wash over me. You did, Dad confirms. The police officer told us you probably saw her fall in and tried to help, but you couldn't reach her. You were too small. I close my eyes, trying to remember. For a moment, I think I can feel the sun on my back, hear splashing water. A laugh cut short, but it's gone as quickly as it comes. I need to see the Riverside records, I say suddenly. My therapy records. Mom looks startled. Why? Because I want to understand what happened to me, what I said in therapy, what I remembered. Dad hesitates. We'd need to contact Dr. Michaels. She might still have your files, but I want to see them, I insist. I need to know who I was before you erased Emma from my life. Mom flinches at my words, but Dad just nods slowly. Okay, we'll call tomorrow. We sit in silence for a while, the three of us around Emma's grave. I try to imagine what she would look like now, if she'd lived exactly like me, I suppose, but maybe with different interests, different friends, a whole other person who would have grown up beside me, sharing everything. I had dreams about her, I say suddenly. I didn't know that's what they were, but I used to dream about a girl who looked just like me. She was always trying to tell me something, but I could never hear her. Mom makes a small, broken sound. That's why we need to stop hiding things from each other. I continue. No more secrets. I want to know everything about Emma. What she was like, what her favorite toys were, how we were different, even as babies. Dad reaches out, touching the lamb carved on Emma's headstone. You were cautious. She was fearless. You'd watch her do something first, then follow if it seemed safe. She loved music, Mom adds softly. Anytime your dad played guitar, she'd bounce and clap. You preferred books, you'd sit still for stories even as a baby. I want to see videos, I say. Do we have videos of her? Of us together? Mom nods. We do. They're in storage with her things. We couldn't bear to watch them, but we couldn't destroy them either. I want to see all of it, I insist. Dad looks at Mom, who nods slowly. Tonight, he agrees. As we stand to leave, I place my hand on Emma's headstone one last time. I tried to help you, I whisper. I'm sorry I couldn't. A breeze rustles through the willow tree, sending a shower of leaves spiraling down around us. For a moment, it almost feels like an answer. In the car, I stare out the window, thinking about the 2-year-old me sitting by that pool, reaching for my drowning sister. I wonder if that moment has been inside me all along, shaping me in ways I never understood. Sandra said the police investigated because a child died in circumstances that might involve negligence, I say as we pull out of the cemetery. But you were cleared. Mom's hands tighten on the steering wheel. Yes, no charges were filed. But that doesn't mean we weren't responsible, Chloe. We were. Is that why you never had more children? I ask, because of what happened to Emma? The car slows as Mom pulls over to the side of the road, putting it in park. She turns to face me, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. We didn't feel we deserved another child, she says simply. We couldn't protect Emma. We failed both of you. Having another baby felt like trying to replace her. The raw honesty in her voice makes my anger fade, just a little. You didn't fail me, I say quietly. I'm still here. Mom reaches over and takes my hand. This time, I let her. The cemetery looks different in the morning light. Yesterday with Mom, the setting sun had cast long shadows across the graves, making Emma's headstone look lonely and abandoned. Today, with dew still clinging to the grass and birds singing in the willow tree, it feels almost peaceful. I've come alone this time. Dad offered to drive me, but I needed this moment to myself. I sit cross-legged on the damp ground in front of the heart-shaped pink granite, tracing my fingers over Emma's name. I'm sorry I didn't know about you for so long, I whisper. I'm sorry I forgot you. The words feel inadequate, but they're all I have. I place the small bouquet of daisies I brought against the stone. Mom said they were Emma's favorite. She would toddle around the yard, picking them and stuffing them in her tiny fists. Last night, after we got home from the cemetery, Dad brought up 3 plastic storage bins from the basement. They were labeled simply E in black marker. For hours, we sat on the living room floor going through Emma's things, her favorite stuffed lamb with one ear more worn than the other, tiny shoes with scuff marks on the toes from her first attempts at walking, a sippy cup with faded princesses on the side. And then the videos. Dad set up the old camcorder to play them on our TV. The footage was grainy and the sound quality poor, but there we were, Emma and me. Identical in every way except for the tiny birthmark on my shoulder. 2 little girls in matching overalls, chasing each other around the backyard. Emma always in front, me following cautiously behind. Wait! My 2-year-old voice called from the TV speakers. The sound of my own voice using that nickname made something shift inside me, a door unlocking to a room I didn't know existed. Mom cried through most of the videos. Dad kept his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes red-rimmed but dry. I just watched, hungry for every glimpse of the sister I couldn't remember. In one video, we were in a kiddie pool, not the big pool where Emma would later drown, but a small plastic one filled with just a few inches of water. Emma splashed enthusiastically while I sat more cautiously at the edge, only my feet in the water. Come in, Coco, Emma called to me, using her nickname for me, Coco, another key turning in that locked room of memories. The video cut to Dad carrying us both, one on each hip, into the house as the sun began to set. The camera, held by Mom, zoomed in on our faces, identical except for our expressions. Emma grinning widely, me resting my head on Dad's shoulder, thumb in mouth. Last day of summer, Mom's voice said from behind the camera. Say goodnight, girls. Night-night, Emma shouted, waving enthusiastically. I just waved shyly, still sucking my thumb. The video ended there, and we sat in silence until Dad said quietly, that was the day before. The day before Emma drowned, the day before everything changed. Now, sitting at her grave in the morning light, I try to reconcile the laughing, fearless little girl from those videos with the empty space she left behind. The sister-shaped hole in my life that I never knew was there. My phone buzzes with a text from Dad. Dr. Michaels can see us at 11. We'll pick you up at the cemetery at 10:30. I text back a quick, okay, and return to my silent communion with Emma's headstone. The thought of seeing my childhood therapist makes my stomach knot with anxiety. What will I learn about myself? What memories might come flooding back? Dad's car pulls up at exactly 10:30. Mom is in the passenger seat, clutching a manila folder that I assume contains whatever records they managed to get from Riverside Pediatric. The drive to Dr. Michael's office is quiet. I stare out the window, thinking about the videos we watched last night, trying to hold on to the sound of Emma's laugh, the way she called me Coco. Riverside Pediatric Psychology looks exactly as I remember it, a low brick building with colorful handprints painted around the entrance. Inside, the waiting room still has the same fish tank, the same worn blue chairs, the same stack of dog-eared children's magazines. Dr. Michaels looks older than I remember, her dark hair now streaked with silver, new lines around her eyes, but her smile is the same, warm and reassuring. "Chloe," she says, extending her hand. "It's been a long time. You've grown so much." We follow her into her office, which is decorated with children's artwork and stuffed animals. I sit on the couch between my parents, suddenly feeling like a child again. "Your parents called me yesterday, Doctor," Michaels begins, settling into her chair. "They explained that you've recently learned about Emma and that you have questions about your therapy here." I nod, not trusting my voice. "I've brought your file," she continues, lifting a thick folder from her desk. "Normally, I wouldn't discuss a child's therapy with them as an adolescent without a formal request, but given the circumstances and with your parents' permission, I think it's important for you to understand what happened." She opens the folder, scanning the first few pages. "You first came to me when you were 3, about 6 months after Emma's death. You had stopped speaking entirely, which is what we call selective mutism. It's a common trauma response in young children." "I don't remember that," I say. "You wouldn't," Dr. Michaels explains. "Children's brains are still developing at that age. Traumatic memories can be stored differently or not at all." She turns a page in the file. "In our early sessions, you would only communicate through drawing. You drew a lot of water blue pools, rain, sometimes just blue scribbles covering the whole page." She pulls out a faded drawing from the file, unmistakably a child's rendering of a swimming pool with a small figure in it. "You drew this about 3 months into our sessions," she says gently. "When I asked who was in the water, you spoke for the first time since coming here. You said MM. My heart pounds as I stare at the crude drawing. The figure in the water has yellow scribbles for hair, just like mine and Emma's in those home videos. Over the next few months, you gradually started speaking more, Doctor," Michaels continues. "But you never mentioned Emma directly again. It was as if your mind had compartmentalized that memory, locked it away where it couldn't hurt you." "But I came back when I was 7, I say, remembering the nightmares." "Doctor," Michaels nods. "You started having nightmares about drowning, about trying to reach someone in water but not being able to. Your parents brought you back, concerned that the trauma was resurfacing." "Did I remember Emma then?" I ask. "Not consciously," she says, "but in play therapy, you would often set up scenarios with 2 identical dolls. One doll would always end up in danger, and the other would try to save her but couldn't. When I asked about these scenarios, you would say they were just games." Mom makes a small sound beside me, like she's trying not to cry. "In one session, Doctor," Michaels continues, "you told me about a recurring dream where you were at a pool with another little girl who looked just like you. You said she fell in the water, and you tried to grab her hand, but your arms weren't long enough." The description sends a chill through me. I remember that dream. I had it for years, well into elementary school. I never connected it to a real memory. "That's when we started the survivor guilt counseling, Doctor," Michaels explains. "Even though you didn't consciously remember Emma or the drowning, your subconscious was processing the trauma through these dreams and play scenarios. Why didn't you tell me the truth then?" I ask, turning to my parents. Dad looks down at his hands. "Dr. Michaels advised us to follow your lead. If you started asking questions or remembering on your own, we should be honest. But forcing the memories might cause more trauma." "And you never asked?" Mom adds softly. "The nightmares stopped after a few months of therapy. You seemed happy. We thought maybe it was better that way." I turn back to Dr. Michaels. "Is that true? Was it better for me not to know?" She sighs, closing the folder. "There's no simple answer to that question, Chloe. Memory suppression is the mind's way of protecting itself. For some children, that protection is necessary until they're emotionally equipped to process the trauma. For others, the truth, even if painful, is the healthier path. But now that I know, I press. Will I remember more? Will it all come back?" "It might," she says carefully, "or you might only ever have fragments. The human memory isn't like a video recording that we can simply replay. It's complex, imperfect, especially memories formed at such a young age." On the drive home, we're quiet again, each lost in our own thoughts. I stare out the window, trying to make sense of everything I've learned. The drawings of water, the dreams of a girl who looked like me, the games with identical dolls. My mind had been trying to tell me about Emma all along, in the only ways it knew how. Back home, Dad brings out the 3rd storage bin we didn't get to last night. This one contains photo albums dedicated just to Emma and me together, our first birthday, Christmas, bath time, playground visits. In every photo, we're either matching completely or wearing coordinating outfits. You were inseparable, Mom says, pointing to a picture of us sleeping in the same crib, our tiny hands touching. Even as babies, you'd cry if we put you in separate cribs. Emma was always the leader, Dad adds, turning to a photo of us taking our first steps. Emma is a step ahead, reaching back to hold my hand. But you were a team. She'd go first, then make sure you followed safely. I study the photos, trying to feel some connection to the little girl who was my other half for the first 2 years of my life. In one picture, we're in the bathtub, covered in bubbles, Emma's arm around my shoulders as we both grin at the camera. I wish I could remember her, I say, my voice catching. Really remember her, not just know about her. Mom reaches for my hand. You do remember her, Chloe, in ways you don't even realize. The way you always sleep on the right side of your bed, that's where you slept in the crib you shared. Emma always took the left side. And how you hate being alone in water? Dad adds, you've never liked swimming, even though we put you in lessons after what happened. The instructor said you were terrified of putting your face in the water. These small revelations hit me one by one, pieces of myself that I never questioned, never knew were shaped by Emma's absence. The way I always check that doors are locked. Multiple times. My fear of being alone. The comfort I find in having identical items, matching socks, 2 of the same pencil, duplicate copies of favorite books. I think, Mom says carefully, that you've been missing her your whole life without knowing who you were missing. The words resonate through me like a bell being struck. That's exactly how it feels, like I've been homesick for a place I couldn't name, longing for someone whose face I couldn't recall. Later that night, I sit on my bed surrounded by photos of Emma and me. I pick up the one that affects me most, us at the beach, building a sandcastle together. We're looking at each other instead of the camera, caught in a moment of perfect connection, identical smiles mirroring each other. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, I whisper to her image. I tried, I really tried. For the first time since learning about Emma, I let myself cry, not just quiet tears but deep, racking sobs that seemed to come from a place I didn't know existed inside me. I cry for the sister I lost, for the memories I don't have, for the twin bond that was severed before I could even understand what it was. When the tears finally subside, I feel different, lighter somehow, as if something locked inside me has finally been released. I carefully place the beach photo on my nightstand where I can see it from my pillow. That night, I dream of Emma again. But this time, we're not at a pool. We're in a field of daisies, running through the flowers, laughing. She turns to look at me, her face my face alight with joy. Coco, she says clearly, I'm okay, and you will be too. I wake with tears on my cheeks, but they're not entirely sad tears. For the first time, the dream doesn't feel like a warning or a plea for help. It feels like permission. Permission to live, to be happy, to stop carrying a guilt I never should have borne. At breakfast, I tell my parents about the dream. Mom cries again, but she's smiling through her tears. That sounds just like her, she says, always making sure everyone else was okay. Dad reaches across the table and takes my hand. What happened to Emma was an accident, Chloe. A terrible accident that none of us, especially not you, could have prevented. I think we've all been carrying that guilt for too long. I nod, finally understanding that the weight I've felt my whole life, that unexplained heaviness that sometimes made it hard to breathe, wasn't just my own grief, but the unspoken grief of my entire family. I want to go back to the cemetery, I say, but this time, I want us all to go together, as a family. And so we do, the 3 of us, standing together at Emma's grave, no longer hiding from the truth or from each other. Dad places his arm around Mom's shoulders, and she leans into him in a way I haven't seen in years. I stand between them, holding their hands, forming a circle of connection that somehow feels like it includes Emma too. I'm not afraid anymore, I tell them, and I mean it. The fear that has shadowed me my whole life, fear of water, fear of being alone, fear of losing the people I love, seems less overwhelming now that I understand where it came from. I look down at Emma's headstone, at the lamb carved at the top, at her name etched in the pink granite. I'll always miss her, I say, but I don't think I need to forget her to be okay. Mom squeezes my hand. No, she agrees softly. We don't need to forget her, any of us. As we walk back to the car, I feel Emma with me in a way I never have before, not as a ghost or a shadow, but as a part of me that was always there, waiting to be acknowledged. My twin, my other half, the sister I lost but never really forgot. And for the first time since learning about her existence, I feel not just grief, but gratitude. Grateful that I had her, even if just for 2 years. Grateful that I know about her now. Grateful that, in some small way, she's still with me. I am Chloe, and I had a twin sister named Emma. That truth no longer feels like a burden. It feels like coming home.